Good morning, everybody. We created the Just product to advance product itself. We wanted to have the local community to meet and connect, but also learn from the leading minds in product.
And especially like the talk from Marty Kagan was very good, very honest.
Great people, great atmosphere, great venue.
I was pleasantly surprised how easy it was to talk to people here.
The heart of Munich, to be with all these awesome product managers. I can't just say I'm looking forward to the next time.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us in your lunch break today. I hope everybody has grabbed some food. To be honest, out of courtesy, we haven't, because I guess it's always a little bit like if you can crisper and crumble with stuff on the microphone, it's a little bit weird, right? So I don't even know if I still have to introduce Afonso, but before we kind of jump right into it, it would be super interesting to see, first of all, where you are watching and listening from today, and also just as a point of reference, if you are already using OKRs in your organization. Maybe that is a good kind of starting point for the discussion today. So first of all, Afonso, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you, Sebastian. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here again.
Yeah, it's gonna be. Yeah, it's not been too long since we've been here the last time, right?
Oh.
It was November, maybe. November?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Pretty awesome. All right, so let's see if we can. If we already have a couple of answers here in regards where people are coming from. Nothing yet, but I guess there's always kind of a delay in LinkedIn.
Yeah.
All right. Since lunch break is short, I would say we get started, and then we kind of pull in the comments as they fly in. So here, for instance, Geoff from Manchester, already have been for 10 years now. That's super impressive.
Nice.
Yeah. Cool. So maybe let me start by introducing Afonso. So I think there's actually, obviously he is a great product person, product leader. But I think there's two things that I really love about, let's say, the CV of Afonso. So two fun facts if you didn't know yet. So one of the things that both Afonso and me love a lot is rugby, and he was actually in the national team of Portugal playing sevens rugby on an international level, which I find like super impressive. And the second thing that you might want to know about Afonso, that he lent his voice to the Portuguese version of quite a few Pixar movies when he was like younger. But yeah, other than that, I'm obviously today super excited to have Afonso here because he has just published a book about OKRs, harnessing the power of OKRs. And in this book, he's outlining 4 core issues with OKRs, and he has talked to product leaders all over the world about these problems. And so we're going to talk about the 4 problems of OKRs today a bit. So, Afonso, Thank you so much again for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for the introduction, for the fun facts. Those are 2 Very good fun facts, actually.
Yeah, it's definitely a great story, isn't it? Like,
It is.
perfect.
It's good experience. Yeah.
Cool.
Where do you want to start?
I mean, maybe we can just start like, okay, so what are the 4 main problems with OKRs that you are currently seeing in organizations out there? And maybe you can also tell us a little bit how you kind of got into the situation that you intensively worked with OKRs and got interested in uncovering these problems with OKRs.
Yeah. So, okay. People use OKRs in various shapes or forms. The main problems are not even knowing what OKRs are. So it's basically an awareness problem. I see this when I go into some organization and there's laundry lists of things to do, and so there's no outcome-driven goal setting in any shape or form, so that people are not aware of how to use these things, which OKRs solve. Then the second problem is misunderstanding. There's so much misunderstanding about OKRs, even for people who are using it for decades. There's still a lot of confusion, basically, around OKRs. People still mistake key results as tasks, as basically outputs. People still do OKRs without even having a product strategy. People still do OKRs without even having a team. So there's like one OKR for someone there 20% and someone there 40%, whatever. We can explore some of these situations. More advanced techniques as well that are missing. And so in essence, it ends up not being a very successful OKR approach. And the fourth problem is, the third is adoption. So people actually want to try this stuff. They read the books. They hear that Google does it, that Amazon uses it, that all these big companies. Well, if they're using it, then we must have to use it too. If they are successful, that's because they have OKRs. And then they try OKRs, and it's a massive cultural clash between what the tool requires and what they actually already have. So it's a massive cultural clash, and they have no idea how to untrap themselves. So that's something that is a very juicy topic we can talk about all day. And the fourth big problem is basically the OKR Theatre, which is a bit more advanced. It's basically for organizations that are already using it. They claim to be using it, but then when you go in that organization, what you see is output-based key results most of the time. Teams do not follow through the OKR, so they don't check them very often. Again, they don't have a strategy. People don't really know why they're doing what they're doing. So it's basically a theater. You usually hear when you ask them, well, but do you use OKRs actually? And people say, well, yeah, we have a dashboard with OKRs, but it's just because my boss asked us to do it in the beginning of the quarter, and that's why we have it. That's basically a theater.
All right, so we have the awareness problem, we have the misunderstanding problem, we have the adoption problem, and we have, and I like this one the best, the theater problem.
Yes, I like that one the best too. It's fascinating to dig into, and realize that it's an actual theater.
Okay, so then let's get to it so that we reach that one really quickly. So let's talk about the awareness problem for a bit, right? So I mean, you just said that some organizations lack awareness that OKRs actually exist. Is it just a lack of awareness that this methodology exists? Is it a lack of awareness that they actually have a problem that could be solved by OKRs, or what is it exactly?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's both. Most of the time, these people, in these organizations, very traditional organizations usually, and I have to say before I dive into this problem, this is what I see the least. Usually people are aware of OKRs. People, it's gone pretty viral. Like, it's nothing novel. Everybody has heard of it at least. But you still see laundry lists all the time. You don't really, they're not aware of, they may be aware of the technique, as in like, hey, OKRs, I've heard about that. I read an article about that sometime, but they're not aware of the power that, the transformational power that OKRs enable, basically. They're not aware of how it is to work in an empowered way, using outcome-driven goals, following, checking on these results very frequently, setting those objectives together as a team. All these habits, all these dynamics, they're basically not aware. They have never seen it. They have never done it before. And so that's a problem, because it's more kind of an immature organization. It requires a bit more kind of step-by-step, baby steps approach.
So you mean, can you maybe quickly explain what you mean when you say laundry list?
Yeah. So when you go to an organization and you ask, okay, can I see what you're trying to achieve? And they say, yeah, sure. Just here's what we're doing. And they send you a Notion page or an Excel sheet or or a Miro board. It doesn't really matter the format they use, but it's literally a list of tasks. So it's like launch product Z by end of the month, integrate with X platform by the end of the quarter. Talk with 5 customers, get this partner involved in blah, blah, blah. This is basically tasks. And what I want people to understand is that these tasks, these tasks might be good and might be important, but that's not what you need to measure. And that's certainly not what you need to aim for. So we're touching now on the outcome versus or over output discussion, which is, I think we should definitely address that in more detail.
Okay. So basically, so there's what you're saying is basically, okay, there's an awareness problem that it's not really that much about that OKRs exist, but it's more about that they can help to solve or to help with that transition from a pure output, what you call laundry lists, right? So basically check, did that, done that, and getting into a more data-driven, outcome-driven culture. So,
yes, exactly.
So that companies are not really aware that OKRs can help here, or that they are even doing something in big quotations wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, that's awareness. And everybody, feel free to chuck in questions into the chat, so we can get them on stage and then answer them maybe also ad hoc. We will have about 20 minutes of Q&A at the end of the session. But there's one question already, Afonso, and that is a really important one. So which characters in Pixar movies?
Good. Well, I've done The Incredibles. I was the little guy running fast. I don't know the name in English actually. Of that The Incredibles, the movie. Yeah. I've done Bambi 2. I've done Narnia. So I was Edmund in Narnia. I did probably 20 movies, both Pixar and Disney back in the day. How to Train Your Dragon, that was the last one, I think. So that was 6 years ago. Yeah. So
watch out. So Afonso is probably the only product person that has an IMDb page.
That's true. Yeah.
All right. Good. So let's talk a bit about the misunderstanding problem. The second.
Yeah, it's a big one, and I'll tell you why, Sebastian. Because I have some sympathy about people that misunderstand OKRs, because there's actually quite a lot of literature out there that is preaching what I would say is an outdated way of looking at OKRs for people building products specifically. So, everybody knows Measure What Matters from John Doerr. That's one of the kind of reference books when people talk about OKRs. But in fact, if you read John Doerr's book, the book is great, and there's a lot of good things in there. But when you get into the key results, and Marty Kagan actually talked about this many years ago, and Felipe Castro as well. It's a really good OKR coach. When you look into the key results in Measure What Matters, those key results are tasks. And so most of the key results in Measure What Matters book are actually tasks. They are outputs. And that breaks the whole flow of having empowerment. And I kind of need to dive into this, Sebastian. So we need to sort of spend 1 minute or two in this whole outcome versus output thing, because it's basically the kernel of good OKRs. It's what enable empowerment. So is that okay?
Sure, go for it. I mean, it's an important topic anyways, and it helps.
So
If
very
it helps to understand it better, then let's go for it. Yeah, we can spend 3 or 4 minutes.
Perfect. Okay, so basically, in my experience, people hear output, outcome, but they don't really know what an outcome is. And you kind of realize, okay, do we have an agreement what an outcome is? I love Joshua's second definition of an outcome. He argues that an outcome is a human change in behavior, a change in human behavior that drives a business result. So it's a change in human behavior that drives a business result. That's what an outcome is. And so when I go into a different company and I see the key result of like launch product Z, integrate with platform X, I always ask, okay, what's the actual key result? And they say, well, it's to launch the product. What are you talking about? It's right there. It's written right there. And I was like, yeah, but what's the result that you want to achieve by launching that product? Yeah, and people are confused. It's like, yeah, but well, isn't that to launch the product? And I was like, well, what are you going to achieve with that? What if nobody buys your product? What if nobody uses your product? What's the outcome you're actually looking for by launching the product? And then kind of the light bulb starts to shine, because the thing here is to understand what's the outcome you're actually trying to achieve, the customer and the business outcome you're trying to achieve. Launching the product might be what will lead you to that outcome, but there might be other things that you can do. And in my ebook, what I talk about is, I give an example, like fictional example of, imagine you are a school teacher in a school, Sebastian, and you were given the objective to radically increase student engagement in your class. And I asked you, can you draft a few key results, to measure that? And you say, well, I'm going to implement a no phone policy in my class. And other things you're going to do. And you're happy with that key result. And you see that all the time. You see these tasks all the time. But then I ask you, okay, so how do you know you're actually going to increase engagement, which was the objective? And you say, yeah, I'm going to implement a no phone policy. Well, yeah, but you're assuming that task will lead to increase engagement, which is your objective. But you're missing the most important part. How do you know you're actually increasing? By how much? And so you're not measuring the outcome. So a much better key result would be, increase student grades, or increase student engagement in class assignments by 40%. And then that's the empowerment part. Once we agree on that, like what do we actually want to achieve and why, and how we're actually measuring progress towards that, then the team is empowered to discover the best solution to solve those problems. So in other words, by framing the objectives and the key results as outcomes, we empower the teams to come with the outputs that they want to make that outcome a reality.
I mean, I imagine like that this is always like a hard discussion, because it's now that I reflected, is actually the same issue that we see when we talk to customers, right? They talk about solutions. And if we talk about key results, what you just mentioned is also, okay, the teacher in this example, they came up with a solution, and they are not even questioning whether that solution will work, and then not how to measure it, because they will just assume, yeah, it will work. This will drive our engagement up. All right, interesting. So what is, can you deep dive a little bit more in the misunderstanding part? So I mean, you say it's about key results are outcomes. They are not output. Are there any other misunderstandings attached to OKRs, or is that just like the main one we should focus on today?
So another one I see, that's basically the main one that needs to be addressed sort of immediately, or with urgency in most teams, because it's the one that brings biggest change. Because as soon as you stop starting with the output and you're starting with the outcome instead, the output will be different. I've seen this many times. I go in the team, I see all the outputs, I ask them, what are you trying to achieve? After some discussion, we get into the outcome. And then I ask, is this output that you've planned the best thing you can do to achieve this outcome? And a lot of times is, well, actually, we don't really know. We need to discover, as you said, we need to go out and discover. And a lot of times they go and they realize, well, yes, this was not the best solution to solve that problem. There's something else we should do. So by just having the conversation and by framing the OKR well, they save themselves a lot of wasted money of shipping something that wouldn't be valuable. But you asked, is this the most important thing? Yes, but there's another misunderstanding, which is, everybody talks about OKRs being used on a quarterly basis. And they do that because quarterly cycles have been, the most used. But that's just, pardon my French, but it's just bullshit that you have to have quarterly OKRs. You should have whatever works for you, and you should definitely check in on your OKRs every 2 weeks. It's called the bi-weekly check-in. So people think that, it works on a quarterly basis. I'm going to set the OKRs in the beginning of the quarter. I'm going to have this company-wide presentation where everybody's involved, celebrating, yay, you have OKRs. And then we're not going to look at the OKRs until the end of the quarter. And that's of course where people kind of misunderstand that the power of OKRs is actually to inspect very regularly whether you're moving the needle or not, and drive change, adapt basically based on the progress you're making or not.
Brilliant. I mean, I think some of people in the audience agree, key results in JD book, it's a real problem. So what you mentioned, so you're not the only one feeling like that. All right, so we talked about awareness, we talked about misunderstanding, and there in particular, the main one, outcome versus output. Let's talk about adoption. I mean, when you say there is a problem with adoption in companies, what do you actually mean by that?
Good question. So what I mean by that very bluntly is that most companies fail spectacularly with when adopting OKRs. And that happens for various reasons. So there's basically three main reasons why companies really fail spectacularly. The first one is that people focus on the framework rather than on the principles that they want to achieve. So they jump on doing OKRs because Google is doing it or because Amazon is doing it, not because they believe in the principles that OKRs subscribe to, such as empowerment, outcome-driven goal setting, measuring things frequently, and so on and so forth. And because they focus on the framework, then a lot of the conversations are on the framework and how should we implement that, and they forget about why we're doing this.
I see a pattern there.
The second thing is that they miss key ingredients. And again, to put it bluntly, and pardon my French, Sebastian, the organizations that succeed with OKRs and actually succeed in general get their shit together basically. And that means that you have to have a product strategy, because otherwise it's impossible for you to set up good objectives. Great objectives derive from a strategic context that exists, that have been crafted by insights together with the teams. Then you deploy that strategy through OKRs. And so a big problem with adoption is that companies want to jump in OKRs, but they don't have a strategy. And so then it's like, well, then that falls into theater, which we can talk about later. But it's basically a pattern there. It's a leading indicator to theater. So ingredients, missing the key ingredients is a big problem. Having a strategy is one of the ingredients you have. Having a product team, an empowered product team, is a key ingredient. A lot of times, one executive says, let's do OKRs. I've read this stuff is good stuff. We should do it. And then, the culture they have is basically laundry lists for, engineers just to pick up everything. And then, it just doesn't work. Like the whole is a massive culture clash.
I love this laundry list thing. Afonso, I have to say, like, I love the laundry list thing. It's brilliant. We also had someone saying it in the chat, recognizable laundry list. Brilliant. Absolutely love it. Okay, so what you're saying is that the main issue that you see is that people are just taking the framework and trying to apply that to their organization without any idea like what it is really about and what the prerequisites for it is. And I think this is probably a copy and paste problem for all the frameworks out there if you don't really get what it's for. And someone also said same thing with all frameworks, cough, scrum, cough.
I love that.
Yeah, brilliant.
That was such a good one. I totally agree. It's the same thing for every single framework. Think about what you want to achieve, why you're doing that, because what's good for Netflix and what Spotify has done, it may not work for you and your context and the competency of your teams and what your CEO believes in, which by the way is more important than a lot of people think. And so like these things are very important to contextualize. So that's one reason why adoption tends to fail. The other thing, Sebastian, that is very important to mention is also that people go all in from day one and they raise the expectation quite a lot. It's like, yeah, we're doing OKRs. And then it's like scaling across 50 different teams and everybody has to have OKRs by the end of the week because it's OKR cycle. And then, of course, you know, it everything breaks loose, basically. So basically trying to move really fast before you learn the basics and try it for a while, that's an anti-pattern.
Okay, so I mean, when you hear adoption, right? It's also when I read adoption, I also hear not only like first adoption, but also how it kind of is adopted across the company. Because let's face it, like work in product teams is very different from what, for instance, an operation team does, or what, for instance, I mean, all kinds of departments, sales, etc., do. Is when you talk about the adoption problem, how do you feel about adopting OKRs for like these various different let's call them departments or areas of a company?
Yeah, I've seen it work, and one way is, you know, company OKRs. So one thing to get right first before I answer a question. It's important to distinguish between a company level strategic context and then, for example, product level. So one thing is company strategy, like company direction. The other thing is product strategy. Product strategy derived from a company strategy, right? So company OKRs can be broad enough that cater for product, marketing, and sales, for example. So let's say you have an objective to you know, typical increase revenue or you know, enter in a new market or so on and so forth. Obviously, product alone won't be able to solve that unless you were working in a very specific context, like 100% product-led product and stuff like that. But you know, in B2B cases, sales-driven organizations, you will depend heavily on marketing and sales to make that objective. And so the way I like to see this is you have that objective, and then product will define how might we get there through you know, driving changes in human behavior with our products. Marketing will have their own objectives and their own results of what they believe success looks like, and sales as well. So they will work across. And you know, it's basically a collaboration. If we're all working towards that, as long as we can visualize that we're working towards the same objective, then we can start having conversations and we can work together, basically.
So at the end of the day, what you're saying is it comes down to communication, as most things do in companies.
Absolutely. Over communication and collaboration.
All right. And now drum roll. This is the one that everybody has been looking forward to. This is the one I've been looking forward to because no, I'm not going to spoil the surprise, but like the theater problem. Can you walk us through what this actually? I mean, you hinted at this in the beginning a bit, but can you walk us through how this fields for someone working in a company that has the theater problem?
Yeah. So this is how it feels. You walk in the organization. You are a product manager, or you are a designer, or you are an engineer, or whoever you are. You're someone working in product. And all of a sudden you start hearing that, oh, someone is talking about we should use OKRs, and there's this executive trying to preach about OKRs. He read an article on Harvard Business Review and he wants to use it. And you started hearing these things, and all of a sudden something comes up and say, hey guys, we're gonna start use OKRs and blah blah blah, and this is how we're gonna do it, and we're gonna implement this, and here's what we should be doing, and here's the deadline for us to have OKRs and so on. And then you start hearing stuff like, well, but how am I supposed to create my objectives if I don't have a strategy? Like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. Like, why are we building this? How am I supposed to create an objective for the next quarter if I don't even know where we're going? You start hearing stuff like this from the teams. You start hearing stuff from middle management, like directors of product and directors of engineering. You start hearing stuff like, well, okay, I know I should probably have a strategy and work with the teams, but I don't even know like where we're going as a company. Like, we haven't really decided that. It's been a lot, and a lot of change happened, and blah blah blah. So you start hearing all these conversations, but the OKR thing is still ongoing, because the focus is on getting those OKRs in that dashboard by the end of the week or 2 weeks. And then the theater kicks in when you have those OKRs. So there's a company-wide, presentation. Teams are presenting the OKRs. Leaders are presenting the OKRs. The board has been notified that this is the OKRs for the next quarter, and blah blah blah. And everyone is semi-happy with the artificial kind of effect that we have a goal and we have a key result. But then 1 month in, and you start asking the teams, okay, when was the last time you literally read your key results that you set? And they say, well, that was in company whole kind of update we had last month. And by the end of the quarter, they literally are looking to those key results for the second time, for the first time. So they actually, they haven't done any inspection and any adaptation at all. It's basically a theater. And then you know what, Sebastian, you know what happens after? Everything repeats again. Because guess what? The expectation is that we have OKRs again. And we don't even understand whether we achieve them. You know why? Because some of those key results weren't even measurable. They were like sometimes tasks. The interdependencies weren't addressed. But you know what? We need to have those OKRs by the end of the week because we're going to have to present them. And so it's basically a theater. And the weirdest part is that when you ask people in these organizations, or especially leaders, so you're using OKRs? Yeah, we use OKRs. But then it's like, they're not really using OKRs. They're pretending to use OKRs. And I have a lot of sympathy for this because it's not easy. Like it sounds like I'm here. It's, if you hear me speak, it sounds like it's easy, and obviously it's not. And there are very complex contexts that it makes it very difficult to implement and to align different outcomes and define the right things to measure. But it is possible with some help and understanding, basically. That's how it feels. It feels like you're doing one thing, but it's basically a camouflaged. It's basically bad. It's basically old habits branded in a new label, essentially.
So basically, if you feel like, why am I even doing this? Because like it feels like kind of a reporting thing that we're never going to look at again, and it's just we need to do it. But maybe we get what OKRs are for, but we can clearly see that the way we are using it at the company is not what they were intended for.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're the same. They're the same, Sebastian. The laundry list is the same as the OKR. So they started using OKRs, but then you compare literally the laundry list that they had before, like all the tasks, with the OKR they have now, and all those key results. They're like 12 key results, and those were the 12 tasks that they sort of just try. Okay, let's come up with an inspiring objective to cater for all this stuff we're already doing. It's like it's basically just pretending to use the framework.
Can we have maybe a show of hands from the audience if like we don't have to do like particular problems, so then that it's not as revealing, but I would be interested, maybe a thumbs up if you know or have experienced any of these issues, and thumbs down if this is working like super well in your organization and you don't have like any problems whatsoever working with OKRs. I think that would be interesting to see. Definitely. Just put it in the chat. Don't feel embarrassed if you have to put a thumbs up. After all, I mean, we are also here to learn something, to understand how it looks out there, what you are struggling with. And we have like one comment from Pablo saying maybe improve the OKR adoption in cycles, not abandon after first try and fail.
Yeah.
It's just basically what you said, saying like you shouldn't go all in, but you should like start small and then basically roll out gradually. And then while you roll out gradually, you basically improve with every cycle you do. Yeah.
Absolutely, it's a great point, Pablo. We do have to, if we're trying OKRs for the first time, we need to reduce the expectation. We need to use it as an experiment. We need to say, okay, these are the principles we want to subscribe to. This is what we believe in. This is why we think OKRs can help us. And we're going to try it, and we're going to iterate, and we're going to learn. And definitely, there's going to be things that did not go according to our plan, or there's going to be surprises, interesting surprises, maybe some positive surprises too. We're going to learn together as we go. That's the point of OKRs. It's to learn, not only about what we actually should be focusing on, but also how we work. It helps us to learn from both perspectives.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, I would say we open the round for questions, because also like Tobias Knopp, we tackled the 4 problems, really liked it. Can you share some things that you did to overcome the problems you faced, some good practices from your side? Yeah. So before we dive into it, maybe we can also see if there are any specific questions into these 4 problems, because I have something to announce that I'm personally super excited about, because Afonso and me, we have never met in person. I mean, I guess that's the, let's say, advantage and disadvantage of the digital age. But we will meet in person, and we will do so on the 10th of June in Munich, because I'm super happy that we actually secured Afonso for the 10th of June to come and visit us in Munich. And we're going to do a workshop with him. It's going to be a day, and we're going to basically talk about how to address the awareness problem, the misunderstanding problem, the adoption problem, the theater problem. And it's going to be like a really, really hands-on session where not only people that have never worked with OKRs, but also people who have adopted it for their organization, can learn, can connect, can also share experience across companies. I think that is always super useful. And so it really doesn't matter if you are a leader. Lars, I'm not sure if this is like really true, but like Lars said, I'm the manager that read the article in your theater story. So Lars, come and visit us in June. I think he was half joking, I would say. But so we have 5 super early bird tickets for 490 euros. So if you are quick, you can secure them. That is an offer that will end after the 5 tickets are gone. Or if we reach end of next week, but I guess it's actually when they are gone. So I actually expect them to sell out by like next week, Monday, when everybody is in the office and can raise it with their managers, then it will be gone. So super excited to have Afonso here. To be honest, it's actually a little sad, Afonso, I have to say, like with the whole rugby thing going on between the two of us. There's a 7th tournament in Munich in May. So I looked it up.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Next time we do it in May. Next time
is in May then. Yeah,
definitely. All right. So in case I would just like keep the QR code here so that you can scan it if you want to join. But then let's jump into the Q&A for a bit. So we had let me check if there's like some more. Can't believe there's only Tobias' question about like how we tackled the 4 problems. Feel like more maybe it's like too now people are a little scared to ask something more specific, but maybe you have like some pointers for us when you like some first steps when you think about the 4 problems.
Yeah. So okay, good practices on tackling awareness. I would start with really trying to understand the outcomes you're trying to solve. And this is, it can be done in one conversation. What you need to do is so you have your task, the things you're doing, the project milestones you think you should do. Try to reverse engineer that to the outcomes that you want to achieve. And just start asking, okay, I understand you want to launch this product, or I understand you want to integrate with this platform, but so what? What you want to achieve? So this is called the so what test. It's from Philippe Castro. Just ask, so what? So what? So what? And keep asking, so what? And you're gonna get at some point, I bet with you that you're gonna get at some sort of final end result, end goal that you look at it and it's like, yeah, okay, this makes sense. Okay, now the second question is this the best solution to address this outcome? And how do you know? And the how do you know is key, because it will force you to look into the evidence that you actually have. Most of the time, there's not a lot of evidence because the teams haven't had the time or opportunity to go out and do discovery. And so what this conversation is triggering is basically a conversation about, okay, let's learn about the problem. Let's learn about which solutions should we come up with to solve this problem. Let's learn about whether this solution is the best solution to solve this problem. And then let's discuss how might we measure the progress towards this objective that we just came up with. So that's just a conversation, I would say like a coaching practice that you can have in the organization. Regarding the theater problem, what I would say the most important thing is to try to get in the habits of inspecting and adapting. And so what I like to do is every Friday, I have a meeting with the teams, or I used to have before I became a full-time consultant. When I was a product leader, I had every Friday a meeting about what have we learned this week or the past 2 weeks, depending on the context, and what are we going to do about it. And that meeting was every Friday. And so because the meeting was coming every Friday, the teams already knew that they would have to, learn about the solutions and learn about the problems. Sorry, that was my cat. I don't know if you heard. Learn about the problems to achieve that. So basically, trying to force the habits through those meetings, through having those conversations, basically.
So brilliant, love it.
I don't even know what it was. I hope it was nothing dangerous.
It's just like I'm glad it was just the cat and not the toddler. I mean, there's always like a
I'm glad so.
Yeah. It's so
it's fine. So it's
I mean, basically, what you did as a leader was making the important, like I always say the how do you say that in English? I'm not okay. I will just wing it. So you basically make the important things urgent for your team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
You basically try to force a habit creation.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that creating meetings is the best way to do that, by the way. Mm-hmm. I think we all have enough meetings. So my recommendation there would be like, just look at the meetings you already have and try to incorporate some of these conversations. But the point is, by forcing yourself to have the conversation, if you have it in the agenda that we're going to talk about what we've learned this week and how might we change what we're doing, we're going to talk about that regardless of what we do. It forces us to look at that dashboard with the key results. Have we moved the needle? Have we learned something new? what are we going to change? And so that really sort of forces us to get into that habit.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So Felix is asking, how long should OKR cycles take? So in terms of duration, how much effort should it be? And how is that effort ideally distributed? Basically 90% outcome discovery definition, 10% documentation. So what kind of...
Okay.
Yeah.
Simple answer, very disappointing probably, Felix, but it depends a lot. It depends on what we're trying to achieve. So what I can say is it's important to understand that the planning cycle of the OKR will depend on two things: the complexity of the outcome you're trying to achieve and the interdependencies you have with the teams to achieve it. In other words, if you have a simple outcome that is tied to one team alone, that OKR planning cycle can be, it can take a day, it can take a morning. But with that said, if the teams have a strategy, and if the teams have a good discovery habits, meaning that they're learning every week from customers, when OKR cycle comes in, instead of people kind of rolling their eyes and panicking, oh my God, OKR cycle, we don't know what we're going to do, they already know. So in the best teams, they already know what they're going to do. That conversation lasts a morning, lasts a day, because they already have lots of insights on what should be prioritized and why. They already have the story on why we should prioritize this over this, because of our strategy is this, because our company direction is this. Like, there's all these things in place. So it can take a day. In more complex situations where, for example, there's a product team who is dependent on a platform team to achieve a certain outcome, that will take naturally more time, because now you need to collaborate with that team, you need to plan, you need to align. And so, it can take a week. For example, Duolingo tried to not go over 2 weeks, so they have a 2-week cycle, and that's about it. And they have different initiatives throughout the week, those 2 weeks. I described that in the end of my book, in the appendix area. So yeah.
Okay, so hopefully that as always, kind of obviously the question is always a little disappointing when you say depends, but I think you said a little more than that. You said, like, in good teams with no interdependence, then you should get it done in like half a day or a day or so. I think that is a good frame of reference then already, I would say, right? Is there and is there anything or any insights from your side how this effort is distributed in terms of, like, we define it, the discovery, and then basically the documentation bit?
Yeah. So again, it depends a lot. But if we have the right habits, and product leadership, meaning for example, a director of product or a CPO, is already working together with the teams on drafting these things, on co-creating the key results, and so on, that's going to be smoother. Because, for example, I'm going to give you some more detail. Let's say that a team is responsible for coming up with their objectives and the key results. And then they have a workshop for a day. And then the day after, they're going to align with the leader. And then the leader needs to align with their leader. And then, all of a sudden, in all these bureaucratic conversations usually, but sometimes also important, they have to happen, all of a sudden a week has passed. So to avoid that, and also to foster more empowerment, aligned empowerment environment, what I like to do is the product leaders assign a drafted objective to the team. So this is something that the product leader has thought, obviously, together with the team before the cycle occurs. It doesn't come as a surprise, but it's something that the product leader has matured, has something to, has had time to align with the other leaders, has spent time on strategy and so on, comes up to the team with a drafted objective. So the team has a starting point. Then in the best teams, what I see is a negotiation. There's a negotiation between that drafted objective and what we actually should commit to. And then eventually teams agree on, okay, this is what we should do and why. And also, this is what we're not going to do. So they agree on both the things we're going to do and the things we are not going to do. And then we co-create together the key results. And that can last a day. How might we measure this? So basically, those are things that happen. When it comes to documentation, to actually document the OKR using whatever software you're using, like, Miro boards. I've seen, organizations describing their OKRs with the Miro board. I've seen, in Google Docs. I've seen in Notion. I've seen whatever you use. The PM can take that role, but honestly, I hate to assign these roles to specific people. My answer is usually like, well, whoever has the time in the team.
Yeah, makes sense. But I mean, what you're saying is essentially, again, what we talked about earlier is like, it's about strategy, right? Deciding what we want to do and also what we don't want to do in terms of OKR. So it's just basically like kind of bringing down the company strategy to the product level and then to the team level. So
yes,
I think then also, again, it makes a lot of sense that it doesn't work if you don't really have a product strategy or a company strategy.
Yeah,
this one is super interesting from Elmar. Should team OKRs be synced over organizations, or can products have, for instance, I think there's two questions in it. First of all, should they be synced content-wise, and then should they be synced cycle-wise?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Very kind of million-dollar question for a lot of organizations. Again, I hate to say it depends, but I'm going to give you a little bit more than that. So sometimes there's benefits of standardizing cycling. And that's because you get to align. So, for example, if you have a business outcome that is shared by a sales team and a product team, but they're doing different things. So this would be what we call a shared OKR. You have the objective, but it's shared by two different teams. And those teams have different key results, but they lead to the same objective. When that is the case, having standardized cycling is usually beneficial in some shape or form. The pitfall I see sometimes is that because this standardization has been in place for a while, then teams force themselves to articulate the outcomes for that specific time period. And sometimes they would be much better off to shorten it down. Sometimes it's an outcome that should be just for 1 month. Sometimes it's a really complex outcome that honestly takes more than 3 months, and you're not going to see the result. You're not going to be able to measure them even in more than 3 months. So sometimes there's actually benefits from extending it. So my main recommendation here is try to understand the principles you want to achieve, and then break the rules if it makes sense, but be very deliberate about doing it.
So also trying to kind of get that down to maybe one single sentence. The short answer is you can, but you don't have to. And if it's more effort doing so than not doing so, maybe focus more on the outcomes and what you achieve than worry about the structure.
Yeah, you can say that. So
it was not spot on. I can see that in your face. It was not spot on.
So the outcomes is the most important thing. So if you find benefit of not aligning that outcome with sales and break the standardized cycle pattern, do it. That's the short answer.
Good. All right. So Florin will already be joining us. Brilliant. Nice. Florin, see you there.
Looking forward to see you there, Florin.
For everybody else, if you want to make sure that you still get one of the early bird tickets, then just make sure to scan the code or click the link in the comments. I think we have room for one last question. So if you have a question for Afonso, now is the time, and he will even answer it for free. Otherwise, you have to buy the ticket and come into the workshop and ask him. which will be brilliant anyways, but I can only recommend that. But if you have like one last question, maybe. Otherwise, I probably have one. So the theater problem. You said this is the one. This is the big one, right? I simply have one question. It's like, why do organizations not change anything about it sooner? Because I mean, people must realize that something is not right there, right?
It's the $1 million question, Sebastian, or another one. Why don't organizations transform sooner? That's the question you ask to every single blockbuster case type of thing. I don't think Blockbuster was asking that question until Netflix, decided to do their own thing. They actually, just a fun fact. I don't know if you're aware, but Reed Hastings, the CEO at Netflix, at the time, that he actually proposed a joint venture with Blockbuster, but they didn't want to. So I don't think they were aware. And obviously it's a different. We're talking about different things here, but the principle is the same. It's back to the awareness problem, and if I had to choose one thing, I think it boils down to product leadership. So in a lot of organizations, product leadership is missing, and I think a lot of that happens in Europe as well, more so than for example in the United States. This is something that Marty Kagan talks a lot in his book Transformed. I haven't read it, but I just know he's gonna tackle that quite extensively. Product leadership is what basically helps these organizations getting into these habits and being aware that this is a problem and that there's change that must be in place.
Perfect. All right, I think we are nearing the end of our lunch break. I know there's like some more questions in the chat, but this will have to wait up until the workshop. So make sure to join. It's going to be fun. I will also be there. Marty Kagan won't be there, but he's going to be on this channel next week on the 12th, actually on his book release day. So I'm still trying to get my hand on the book. So Amazon has basically given a present to quite a few people by shipping it early, not for me. So I'm going to steal it off a friend at the weekend. But yeah, Afonso, thanks again so much. I think that was really a session, like a great session to understand like the problems attached to OKRs and their implementation. And also, I think it was a great session to figure out, am I doing something, I don't want to say wrong, but is there something going on in my organization that might be great to tackle and great to change? So thank you so much. Thanks again. As always, it's a delight, as always, talking to you, and super inspiring and insightful session again.
Thank you. Likewise. Thanks for having me, Sebastian. Really appreciate it. Hope
perfect. So the guest has the last word. So any last words?
No. Besides, if you want to learn more, I have spent quite a few years learning about OKRs and trying and failing a lot. And then I basically dissected everything I've learned in an ebook called Harnessing the Power of OKRs. It's available. You can buy it through my newsletter, Scandinavian product newsletter. So if you want to learn more, just go and buy the book, and also subscribe to that and join us in Munich.
It's going to be brilliant. Thank you so much, Afonso. And thanks everybody for joining. I really, really appreciate it, because you have given us just 1 hour of your most valuable asset, your time. And that I'm always very humbled about. So thank you so much. And hopefully see you next week, 12th at 4 p.m. Right here for Marty Kagan and his latest book, Transformed. See you later.
Have a good one, everyone.